G'day Art Snackers, my name is James of Burke Creative and welcome to another month of ArtSnacks Box Freestyle, where we take the supplies from the ArtSnacks Plus May 2023 box, experiment with them to within an inch of their lives, and then hopefully create a masterpiece for the hashtag ArtSnacks Challenge. This month's fun fact is, any day now I'll be getting a new niece or nephew. My little sister is pregnant and it's literally any day now, so I'm super excited. We have a whole bunch of nieces and nephews and I love being an uncle. So that's my fun fact for this month. Let's get into the box and see what we have to play with. Here is the ArtSnacks Plus box for May 2023. Here's everything inside. Let's unwrap that little green burrito and take a closer look at what we'll be using today. First up in the Plus box, we have the Express It blending cards, 8.5 by 11 inches. That is white cardstock. We also have a set of 6 Lyra Aqua Brush Duo markers. We'll be using 2 Olo brush chisel alcohol markers. I have the color Vermilion and the color Latte. And we have 2 King Art Inkline Fine Line ink pens. I have the sizes 08 and 01, as well as a Sakura Sumo Grip mechanical pencil, 0.5 millimeters. We have the snack and the sticker. Let's set everything up and start playing. While we go through our little tests, I'm going to read you some information from the menu cards in the boxes. We have the Express It blending cards. This is the white cardstock I'm using to draw on right here. Meet the perfect surface for your alcohol markers. Express It blending cards. This high quality bright white cardstock is ideal for marker blending since it won't peel or feather. Its heavyweight 250 GSM can stand up to alcohol ink, and the silky smooth surface is gentle on marker nibs. Now, a note on every bit of information just mentioned there, I do find it to be very bright white, which can give you really bold, beautiful color payoff, especially when you've got really specific colors and you really want to pick up on the vibrancy of those colors. A bright white will always pop them out really nicely. The pilling and feathering, I did not notice this to feather, but if you really do go to town with the markers, the water-based markers in particular, which again, this is kind of alcohol ink cardstock, so we're kind of testing it against what it was made for in that respect, but it will pill. If you get it very saturated with those water-based markers and you kind of scrub into it, it will pill a little bit, but you would expect that from almost any paper if you scrubbed it as aggressively as I do when I put it through these tests. All good things to note. If you go quite light with it, it's actually not a problem at all, but layering up, especially those water-based markers, a bunch will start to pill a little bit, and you'll kind of get a feel for it as it happens, so you'll know when to back off. But the alcohol markers went down really beautifully smooth. It's a very absorbent paper, and it keeps the alcohol markers wet long enough to get really smooth, beautiful blends from those. So I've always said the alcohol markers were just, you know, they're really difficult for me because I work in journals, and so they bleed through. I mean, you can see it kind of bled through on the desk there, but I've always loved them. They are the equivalent, oh my cat's meowing, they're the equivalent of being able to draw with completely flat color, and to do so you have to keep that ink really saturated in the paper whilst you move the pen around. So you really want a paper that's not going to dry too quickly and an environment that the ink is not going to dry too quickly, and you want a really nice juicy marker, which those were. So it was actually a bit of a dream to use these alcohol markers on this particular cardstock. And a really smooth cardstock is also a lot better. I tend to ruin a lot of my, well, I wouldn't say ruin, but I really put them to the test when I use alcohol markers on watercolor paper, because it just drains the ink out of them. Something like this that's thin enough and sturdy enough to be able to take the marker but not warp is just ideal. So really had a good time with this cardstock. I think it is perfect for alcohol markers. The Lyra Aqua Brush Duo markers, the set of 6, talk about a dynamic duo. Lyra Aqua Brush Duo markers feature a flexible brush tip on one end and an extra fine bullet tip on the other. Filled with water-based ink, these markers produce bright colors that can be brushed with water to achieve watercolor effects. This set features 6 vibrant hues you can blend and layer. I got the pastel tone set. I believe there are other sets that you can get, ones like a lot more bright, vivid jewel tones. I'm not quite sure what the actual set is called, but this one was the pastel tones, and they're very beautiful. They are water-based, which is different from alcohol-based, but they will play together. You'll notice a lot more water-based markers will streak. You won't be able to get that really solid laydown of flat color like you will with an alcohol marker, which you can use to your advantage, especially when you're working with trying to build texture. You'll get a lot of that streaking can become a really nice way to layer line work on top of each other to really build some vibrancy and some, nice layering type effects. Anyway, I do really love these markers. I really love a brush tip. I love a brush tip on anything. There is a difference to brush tips though, and I think we've covered this before, but there's a brush tip that is like this felt tip where it's just a it's a brush tip. I mean, they're both brush tips, but the other one is bristles. The bristles that have the individual fibers, the individual hairs that splay apart. This is not that. And when I have water-based markers, I do prefer these felt tip ones because they don't let out as much ink, so it's a little bit easier to control how saturated everything gets, which I do want. I don't try to make these non-streaky, I usually work with it, and on this particular cardstock I actually noticed they leveled out a little bit. They weren't as streaky as they would be, say, on just regular printer paper, so it's always good to kind of test your mediums on everything. For the ArtSnacks challenge we obviously use what's in the box, but these markers work also really, really well on a lot of planners that I own that have coated thin, like very, very thin, almost onion skin type thin, very thin coated papers. I love the water-based brush markers for those. I use them almost exclusively for drawing in those types of journals that I have. Let's move on to the rest of the items in the box. We have the two OLO. I'm not quite sure if it's the name or if it's a, what do you call them? An abbreviation? Brush chisel alcohol markers. This is a new product. It's also new to ArtSnacks. The OLO is not just another marker, it's unique design lens artists' complete customization control. From the ink to the nib. Just unscrew one end from the other to mix and match. They also hold twice as much ink as any other alcohol marker. We've included 2 different colors in your box, each with brush and chisel nibs. These were really interesting. I've never seen anything like this before, and I imagine that for people who like to take a very limited amount of supplies with them, like people who travel or people who work, out of home or out of your studio, wherever you are at, this would be a great option because you can essentially split them in half and customize to have 2-in-1 markers. They don't blend the inks together. I know there are chameleon markers that will end up blending the inks and they'll have like a gradient thing going on. It's not that, it's just almost like you've got 2 mini markers that are connected together, and so you essentially could halve your kit. And I'm just putting this out there, I'm not quite sure how true this statement is, but I feel like most people either prefer the chisel nib or the brush nib, but not a lot of people use both as evenly. So I imagine that even still, possibly you have a friend that really likes a chisel nib and you really like a brush nib, you could possibly even half your expense if both of you bought a set and then you swapped out all your chisel ends for the brush ends of the other. You'd be able to get a 2-for-1 there. So a really interesting product I've never really seen before, and the markers themselves were really beautiful, especially on this paper. I loved the colors. That latte was nice and vibrant. So was the red, the vermilion. I imagine they all look quite spectacular on this cardstock. So that was good. The 2 King Art Inkline Fine Line ink pens. I hope I just read that well because all my brain was just struggling to keep up with that. Whether you're jotting down quick sketches on the go or creating a masterpiece, these reliable fine liners won't let you down. Say goodbye to smudging and smearing with their archival waterproof ink and durable tips. They glide smoothly across the paper with no skips, blots, or feathering. I found that all to be true. Working on smooth paper is a little bit different to working on textured paper or paper with a bit more tooth, especially when you're using pencil and fine line ink pens. What you'll notice is it can be a little bit more slick. So give yourself a little bit of grace for your drawings. It can be a little bit more difficult to achieve the same line control that you have on a more textured paper. It's just the way that our hands work. We like a little bit of tension when we're dragging that pencil or that pen across the page, and a smooth paper with little to no tooth, it does become very slick, so you can find yourself feeling like you have a little less control. That would be the thing that I would point out there, because for me, I associate fine line pens, ink line pens, fine liners, whatever you want to call them. I associate them with clean line work. But I went completely the opposite for my ArtSnacks challenge, which we'll get to in a second. The last little bit of information I have is on the Sumo Grip mechanical pencil, that chunky pencil. I love the feeling of this in my hand. This is a staff favorite. Grab this hefty pencil for some powerful drawing. The Sumo Grip is designed for ultimate comfort and function, featuring a triangular grip and jumbo twist eraser that lasts 6 times longer than an average pencil eraser. Its oversized barrel allows for a relaxed grip, making lengthy sketching sessions enjoyable. I have to say, very ergonomic design. I really did enjoy how that felt in my hand. It felt very comfortable to use. That big old eraser is very valuable to someone like me who loves a good eraser from time to time. And yeah, it just is beautiful. I really enjoy it. I mean, there's really not any art supply that is made in Japan that I don't enjoy. They tend to have the best of the best, don't they? So I am a big advocate for the ergonomic feeling that I get from this Sumo Grip. I love this big chunky pencil for my big chunky hand. Alrighty, I'll take a beat and then I'll come talk to you about this ArtSnacks challenge. Alrighty, the actual ArtSnacks challenge. So, I finished playing with everything. I was really enjoying the fashion illustration. You know, I get into my fashion moods every now and again. And it was the Met Gala. I happened to be perusing social media and just taking note of everyone's fabulous fashions. I don't know if you know this, but I think it's a fun fact I've shared before, but I used to want to be a fashion designer. I even applied to go to fashion school and got accepted and just deferred, and I thought later in life I would go back, but then I completely lost my competitive edge for fashion, and now I just do it for fun. I just love to sketch and illustrate fashion illustrations or use fashion in my work somehow just to appreciate and enjoy it. I've always just had such a fascination with it and the whole world of haute couture. I mean, I don't know why, I've just always loved it. So I was watching the Met Gala and they were doing a tribute to Karl Lagerfeld, who was a fashion designer that I used to follow back when I was really, really heavy into it and saved up all my spending money so I could buy every different country's version of Vogue. From Borders. Do you remember Borders? Like, way back in the day? And the ones I couldn't buy, I would just sit in Borders and read. But I had a fair few collections of different publications that I've cherished. The fashion illustrations that he did had this red border that he would put around it. He would just kind of like make this red border around the sketch every time he would do it. So when I was growing up, I would kind of emulate that and I would literally put a red border around my whole illustration. And when I was watching all of these Met Gala looks, I thought, I have this red marker, and it just reminded me of that red line. It was just something super simple, but I thought I could get back into this and have a bit of a fashion day. So I used all of the supplies to create just a trio of red evening gowns for the event, my little tribute to Karl Lagerfeld, which I don't think Karl Lagerfeld would do red gowns. It's a little bit more Valentino. So anyway, don't mind the actual fashion accuracy of this. I felt like it was just a really fun excuse to get that going. And also because alcohol markers always remind me of graphic design and illustration, like fashion illustration. When I was younger, I was basically campaigning my whole family to get me a set of Copic markers. And so every time I had a little bit of money, I'd buy a few extra Copic markers. My gran bought me a huge set of them, the Copic Chows, and now I'm lucky enough to have a massive collection of alcohol markers, and to use these new ones, the Olo ones, which I really, really like. I thought they were really beautiful. I love their brush tip, and it was just super fun to it feels like I'm revisiting those roots, because it's something that I've done. I mean, I've always drawn, but fashion, I feel like, was the first time I ever really thought, art might be a part of like my career in the future. It might be something that I take with me into adulthood that I'm going to need to be good at. So I'm going to have to study it. I'm going to have to, really apply myself to it. So it always feels like I'm kind of revisiting that part of my teenage self. There you go, heavy-handed me snapping the pencil. Just feels very nostalgic, and I love a good fashion illustration. I hope you enjoyed watching some of the techniques from the experimentation come together in this. It was basically just a lot of layering and isolating each individual color, assigning it to a different reason for being in the piece, and that way I got to feature everything in the final image. I'll join you again in a second for the outro. There we go, that's it for ArtSnacks Box Freestyle May 2023. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you would like to join ArtSnacks, you can do so using the code JAMES10 at checkout for 10% off. And if you would like to share your work with us, please use the hashtag ArtSnacksChallenge in the Mix community and on social media so we can enjoy what you come up with this month. Until next month, have a great time. Bye.